Welcome to the Star Wars Film Festival, where the Lorehounds, your guides to a galaxy far, far away. I'm David.
I'm John, and this is our coverage of the 2018 film Solo: A Star Wars Story.
In this podcast, we're going to be discussing the movie's production and plot, followed by a discussion on the state of Star Wars and a ton of listener feedback, including stuff from Ahsoka and Return of the Jedi, a whole lot of big
Return of the Jedi. Well, no,
Wait a
it's
minute.
the Revenge of the Sith.
God,
It's the opposite
I know.
faction.
What is wrong with me? My 77 brain just is stuck in the... Anyway.
That's all right. Be sure to stick around to the end of the podcast, too, for programming notes about our podcasting schedule for the rest of the year. We can say that now.
What the hell is going on? It's the end of the year. Anyway, for early and ad-free access and exclusive content, visit us at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Also, if you'd like to give us a leg up, you can leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. Ratings and reviews help people find our podcast even on the outer rim.
I should have changed it even to even on the Thessel run.
Yeah, Thessel.
Kessel. I'm sorry. I'm just
They're coming
saying
for
things.
you. They're coming for you.
I'm just saying things. Don't at me.
I
Don't
see
at me.
I see the pitchforks and the
anymore.
torches.
Yeah. We do love to respond to your questions, thoughts, and theories on air, even if they come with pitchforks. So send us feedback for the next episode.
Send emails to starwars@thelorehounds.com or head over to our website, and there you can use the nifty voicemail feature or the contact form. Or you can post a message in our Discord server, and we can include those conversations as well. We've got links in the show notes. We've got a fun and engaging community there, and we've got channels for the book projects we're doing and general television chat, a whole dedicated Star Wars channel. So join us there. It's a lot of fun.
Well, David, I think we are in an appropriately punchy mood for this movie because this movie is throwing punches all day.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole vibe of the movie. So, I think people by now, I have this bullet point in our outline, the brief Star Wars personal histories. I think people know by now we are light lore fans, right? We've watched some of the animation stuff. We know a decent amount, but certainly not everything. So if you hear us say something wrong or you want to add some context or depth to something we say.
Thessel.
Yeah. All right, Kessel, we got it. You don't need to write that one in. Feel free to just write that in. That's totally fine. Anyway, let's do our overall impressions of this film. David, you're first.
It is not a film. I don't want to say for me. That's not the right way to say that. I'm glad that this film exists in the Star Wars universe. And I know there's a lot of people who really enjoy it. I think it's good that we have a little bit more wink and a tongue-in-cheek style, movie in there, even though it's a little bit adulty in some regards. There's some scenes of violence and exploitation and other fun adult themes like that. But it is a little bit more of a roly-poly show, and I think I described it this way when we did our live watch, which is a Patreon exclusive that we're doing right now for all the Star Wars films. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes of fan service. And I don't want that to be a negative comment, but it's just packed full of fan servicey stuff and the origin stories of things and why the Millennium Falcon has a cheeky navigation system and all of these kinds of things. And so it's fine. It's fine for what it is. It is what it is. And I don't think it's trying to be more than what it is. And I think accepting it on those terms, cool, right? It's like the Marvels.
Sure.
We just saw the Marvels the other day. We just recorded a big podcast about it. It is what it is. It's a fun, goofy movie. It's throwing some punches. It does a little bit of emotional work here and there, sets up some characters for some stuff. And it was great. It was a good time in the theater. And so I think Solo sort of fits in that box, I think, for me.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think for me, I have to compare the two times I've seen it now. So I saw it first when it came out. I saw it in theaters. I was fresh off the first two Star Wars movies of the new sequel trilogy.
Right.
And I really liked The Last Jedi, you'll recall. So
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty hot on Star Wars at the time, but still a very casual fan. I really enjoyed the Last Jedi. I paid twice to go see it in the theaters. I willingly went back a second time because I liked it that much.
I'm not saying anything.
And it's
I'm
fine.
not
You can
saying
save
a
it for
damn
that pod.
word.
So I think I even brought my wife to go see Solo with me, and I think we both were like, that was a fun movie.
Mhm.
For people not really interested in the deeper lore of Star Wars at the time, I think we both had a good time with it. And
Okay.
looking back, I had fond memories of it, and I watched it this time, and it held up. I have to say, I thought I was going to be a little bit more jaded about it and things like that. I honestly, my biggest critique of it is that there's too many action scenes that lack emotional reasons.
Mhm.
But that is my only critique of it. And well, that and the fact that everything has a very specific reason, like the backstory, everything has a very specific reason. We
Yeah.
really needed him to get the name Solo from an Imperial. Okay, there's a few cutesy things like that I didn't
Right.
like. But other than that, I thought that the main emotional arc worked. I liked Han, growing up in the rough and tumble of Corellia and trying to be the scoundrel,
Mhm.
but deep down, even Kira sees right to the heart of him and goes, "Buddy, you're the good guy.
Mhm.
That's just who you are." And I think that really cut through to Han's character. So I thought that they did a great job doing his characterization. I really liked Kira. I liked Emilia Clarke as Kira.
Yeah.
I liked Woody Harrelson. I barely recognized him at first because he wasn't doing a bit part. And I'm just so used to him from like White House Plumbers, just doing this gravelly voice.
Right. Right.
But I really enjoyed Woody Harrelson. I thought that having the nod to Han shot first and actually having him do it this time for real was
Yeah. Right.
amazing. So there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of those like, oh yeah moments. The thing that I mourn the most for this movie is what could have been, because
Mhm.
I think that this was a great movie to start the Syndicate-verse, to start a series of movies or
Ooh,
TV shows that
yes. The
followed
Huts, the
the
Dawn,
Huts. Yep.
Crimson Dawn.
Crimson Dawn. You've got the Pike Syndicate was mentioned.
Mhm.
You've got plenty of crime families. We could have had live action Maul back. He's back for a minute in here. What a wasted opportunity.
Completely.
I think Kira would have been a great character for us to see that crime syndicate through the eyes of.
And
And
it's a great hook at the end, and then it just never goes anywhere.
right. And I think that if the movie had done better at the box office, it would have gone somewhere.
So, as you're saying that, I think that's really interesting. It's an interesting set of points. And what it makes me think of is this was a long movie, 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If this
Yeah.
had been a tight hour and a half, and we didn't go from here to there and the other thing, if we had just done a simple 2-step heist, right? Okay, so he gets off Corellia. They do the initial heist. It goes bust. They do then the main heist, and that's sort of it. And they didn't go off into all these other things. If they'd kept it really tight, because then there's that whole middle bit where they, release all the droids and do all that stuff. If this was just a really tight movie with Han Solo doing a couple of key things, and then you left a hook, and I think so it was overburdened with plot, but then I think it was overburdened from studio expectation. If the studio hadn't expected it to carry so much weight, we could have gotten 2 or 3 more of these hour and a half light movies, punch, punch, punch. Show us the Syndicate, show us Han doing more stuff, show it, and keep doing these Star Wars stories in a really much narrower story frame and keep the plots much more simple. I think that would have been a really rich universe, and we could have had 3 or 4 or 5 films even by now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you cut out a lot of the unnecessary action in this movie, and it's a really, really, really good movie. But I think
Yeah,
as is,
I agree.
It's about an 8 out of 10 for me, as is.
Okay.
And I really liked it. And I don't want to, with these small critiques, I don't want it to get lost that I really liked this movie and I had a great time with it. I thought that Alden, I'm never going to know how to say his last name, so
Oh
whatever.
yeah, I can never pronounce it either.
I think Alden did
Enrique.
an amazing job as Han Solo. I think he really captured Harrison Ford. I saw you and Tulip Blossom going back and forth. Is he doing the bit too much? I
A
didn't
little bit
think
too
so.
much.
I actually really liked the how much he did it. You know, I thought
Okay.
that he did it just enough where I felt like I was seeing the same character, but not so much where I thought he was just doing an impersonation of Harrison Ford.
He had the vibe, that's for sure. And then it just, for me, there was just a little bit too, and it just went into the overburdening of this movie. We've got to answer the Castle Run problem. We got to question. We got to do the Chewie thing. We got to do this. We got to get the Millennium Falcon. We got to get Lando Calrissian. They packed the entire Han Solo backstory into one movie, and it was too much. And so I think for me, it was all a little bit too on the nose. You know what I mean?
Sure.
The dice, everything. And it was just thick. It was like one of those, well, I know you're a noted cake hater. So it was like one of those multi-layer cakes, like 7 layers of cake. And
disgusting.
And it's a ton of fondant and a ton of,
listen to Second Breakfast if you want to know what David's talking about with me hating cake.
And a thick, cake. And so you're just kind of like, oh, this is a burden to eat. I think that's how I felt. I could have really enjoyed this movie if it had been just simplified in a lot of different ways. Because there was a lot of really great stuff. Paul Bettany's character was amazing. He was just chewing the scenery. It was like off the hook. Emilia Clarke.
It was Vision, right? Vision Voss.
Vision, Dryden Voss.
Yeah, I was just saying Vision because he's Vision in the MCU.
In the MCU, right.
Yeah.
But, Kira's character is really interesting, and the moral quandary that she's, has. There's a lot of great material. I mean, we haven't even talked about Donald Glover. So there's a lot of
Donald Glover as Lando. He has that like arrogant, smugness. I love it. Very, very in line with the character, but he also felt like he was playing it a little differently. I think if you thought that Han was playing it too close to Harrison Ford, I think that you were probably, I'm guessing, more pleased with Lando.
Yeah, but they didn't have to load Lando up as much as they did Han. Okay. We only had to get, a couple of glimpses of him.
Yeah.
And just have a couple of key transactions, the whole card thing. I think it was pretty simple.
I like the card thing a lot.
Yeah.
I liked him stealing the card from him. Because that really got to the core of what they were trying to tell me with this movie, which is Han is a good guy masquerading as a scoundrel.
Right.
And, him stealing the card to make him play fair is such a good guy pretending to be scoundrel thing. That's such a great microcosm of it.
Right. And that chaotic good nature that Han Solo has.
Right.
And by the time Luke runs into him on Tatooine, he's so jaded and scuffed and roughed that's been covered over. And it sort of takes this bigger than life events, saving Leia and getting involved with the Skywalkers. The Skywalkers are trouble. Getting involved with all of that to then push all that dirt and dust away so that we can see underneath. Oh, hey, yeah, there's a shiny hero underneath here rather than an actual bad guy, an actual scoundrel. So yeah, I think in the script they played that well. And when Kira says to him, like, dude, you're not a criminal. You're not an outlaw. Come on, man.
Right.
And they needed that whole thing with Nest, with Ephes Nest, to show us that rather than just tell us that. But again, it was just so burdened. The plot was so burdened that I thought it got a little silly.
Yeah, I think my biggest critique is just too confused in the tone, and because of those lengthy action scenes. And I think we've done enough overall impressions. I want to ask
we're really
you,
getting into the meat of it here.
Do you know anything about the production of this movie?
Zero.
Okay.
I know Ron Howard was brought in at some point, and this is I've been on record before about this, and this is just more evidence in my queer. I'm using this as evidence that leadership at Lucasfilms has a problem. I think they're too cautious,
Mm-hmm.
and they've how many times have they swapped out directors, and how many times have we lost directors? And so just knowing that there's a cloud over Solo makes me just go, see, there is something wrong here.
See,
So,
that's
but
what I'm getting at here is that, the tone being confused is largely because they reshot 70% of this film.
What? 70%?
70% of this film is reshoots.
Good Lord. That's expensive as hell, too.
So they had these two directors, Lord and Miller, and they were generally known to be comic directors, comedic directors.
Sure. Okay.
They hired two comedy directors, and they had them film for a ton of time, and they shot a ton of the movie. They kept pissing off these people because they kept sending the writer, the screenwriter, to the set, and the screenwriter would start barking directions at people
Okay.
and trying to like take over. So they shot most of the film, I believe, and then they showed a cut of the film to executives, and the executive says, "This is too funny. This is too much comedy. We don't want this. You're fired. We're bringing in Ron Howard."
Uh
And you'll recall Ron Howard was actually asked to direct The Phantom Menace by George Lucas.
huh.
And so this is Ron Howard finally doing his Star Wars movie. Fun fact, George Lucas apparently came to set for the first day of Ron Howard's filming to encourage him.
Okay.
And because
Like
he likes
Ron Howard needs
Howard.
encouragement.
Yeah, right. Well, I guess Lucas was Howard's mentor for some reason,
Okay.
which is kind of interesting. But
Well,
yeah,
I mean, American Graffiti, right? Isn't Ron Howard involved in American Graffiti?
I believe so. Yeah. But anyway, so they brought him in. He reshot 70% of the movie. It was apparently a big disaster.
Yeah, Ron Howard
they had to recast somebody because of scheduling now, and it was not great.
So yeah, Ron Howard and Harrison Ford those were early Lucas actors that found their footing with George Lucas. So in 1973.
Right. Okay, I have the recast here. It was actually Michael K. Williams was originally Voss. Voss, and then they had to bring in Paul Bettany after he just could not shoot the movie anymore because they were doing so many reshoots.
Right. I got other commitments I got to follow up on. Yeah.
Right. And he was in The Wire, I guess. He was Omar Little in The Wire, if you know who that is.
Omar's coming.
So he was going to be Voss. He was going to be the crime boss.
That would have been a different movie. That would have been a very different movie. That would have been interesting.
And that's funny because play him for I think the whole movie basically, and then Ron Howard was like,
yeah, this is a funny movie though.
Yes, it is.
So I don't know. It's a very light toned movie. The tone of this movie is very light. Right from the start, when they jump in the cruiser thing, I'm like, oh, this is a Ron Howard movie. Like I forgot the fact that this is a Ron Howard movie. It's properly Howard. Yes, it is very properly Howard. Go listen to Steve and Anthony on our affiliate podcast network. When they jump in the speeder, or when and they're speeding around on Corellia, I was like, oh right, this is a Ron Howard movie because it instantly hit me that tone. This is a Ron Howard film, and it's light. It's the plot is mechanical and transparent. The twists are very easy to discern, or you can feel when they're coming, even if you can't predict the action. So it's solid in that regard. It's solid, right? It's a solid block of entertainment. It tells a coherent story, and all the parts, all the gears and parts click together, and the machine works like it's supposed to.
I mean, I'll say that it works well enough that kudos to Ron Howard for making a coherent movie out of this.
70% reshoots? Absolutely.
It's insane. I want to give a quick synopsis here. Sure. I've summarized it in one sentence, the entire plot.
For a 2.5 hour movie, 2 hour, 15-minute movie.
Han Solo gets his name, his best buddy Chewie, his signature ship, the Millennium Falcon, and a broken heart in this lighthearted dramedy about Han shooting first.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Bravo. Oh, those are some. I think you win some bonus internet points there. That is a very
That's the
tight
movie.
log line. Yeah, that is.
That's the movie. You got the whole thing. You have his origin story.
And that's what I was saying before about it being fan servicey. And I'm not using that as a pejorative. Just simply pointing out that this movie is loaded with that. And at the same time, it did a bunch of cool world building, but then it never went anywhere with the world building. So,
right. So you have a lot of the Syndicate lore building within the Clone Wars, especially a little bit in Rebels, but more of the Clone Wars. And I really wish they had gone somewhere with that because I think that's so cool. I think it's so interesting to say, like, okay, sure, you have the Empire, but you also have this crime family, which has always been part of the DNA of Star Wars with the Hutts.
Yep.
And I wish they would have done that. Also, let's just make this clear. Han would have been a much better person to follow if you wanted to explore the Hutts than Boba Fett on Tatooine.
Yeah, agreed.
We could have just done a mini series on Tatooine with Han instead of Boba, and that would have been way better.
Yeah, almost procedural in nature. You know, he's got to go on this mission. He's got to go on this smuggling run and that smuggling run.
Like the Bad Batch.
Right, exactly. And it just sort of leads, the drama is built in, right? It's just going to, for as good-hearted and lucky Han is, he also doesn't, there's a kind of drama cloud that sort of follows him around. Stuff happens because he's Han Solo.
Right.
And he's going to get into trouble. And that would have been a great little 6-episode, 2-season, 12 total, something like that. That would have been really fun. And crossing paths with all the different crime syndicates. Yeah, I can see that. I could really see that.
It would be great. You learn more about the Pike Syndicate. You learn about Crimson Dawn. You get to see Maul in action, live action again.
I think, too, get this interesting question of, you've got the boot heel of the Empire, right? Squeezing down on everybody. Meanwhile, there's this thriving criminal, multiple criminal syndicates operating within the Empire. So how does that happen, right? They're maintaining order and law and order, right? We're keeping everything, but yet underneath there's this massive crime network operating. And that's an interesting question. That's an interesting space to explore. How does crime arise in a totalitarian style environment?
Yeah.
Because they'd be servicing the Imperial officers. There'd be a lot of bribing and backhanding and, all kinds of using them as cutouts. The Empire could use them as cutouts in all kinds of situations.
Right. We knew Tatooine was a little bit outside the Empire's grip in the original trilogy. Here we have this planet, I can't recall the name of it, but that they go to refine, and they go, oh, yeah, that's outside the Empire's jurisdiction.
Right.
So we know that the Empire has not gotten every planet. You even have Han going like, it's funny because they kind of see that he's sympathizing with the rebellion right away. They're like, we're the hostiles. This is their planet. I did really enjoy that they went with a lot of, okay, he's a scoundrel and he'll act like that to do the right thing or do what's right for him, but it won't always go his way. So you have him with Sabak trying to hustle Lando. That doesn't work because Lando's one step ahead of him. You have him trying to blackmail Tobias in the beginning, to blackmail Beckett and his crew. And they go, oh, yeah, here you go. Here's a deserter. Go feed him to the monster.
Right.
Go feed him to the beast. That was great. So I like that he tries it a lot and it doesn't always work. I thought that was a nice touch because largely in the original trilogy, it does work, except when he gets frozen in carbonite.
Right.
Other than that, it works.
Which were great stakes. We were just left like, oh my Lord, Han Solo, carbonite. Oh my God, what's going to happen? It was such a great hook.
Right.
It was amazing. I did think a great comedy beat too was the, I've got 30 men over in that ship over there.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So
and
again,
Lando
that's just
runs
all
away.
that lighthearted Ron Howard style comedy that,
Right. Right. Yeah. So I think I think honestly, there's not a ton to talk about here, but
Not really.
really, I would say I thought the casting was great. I really did enjoy Paul Bettany as
Oh, he was so
Voss.
good. Yeah.
I enjoyed Emilia Clarke as Kira. And can we just pour one out for Emilia Clarke's luck? Because every big franchise that she gets a part in, whatever thing she's in, ends up not doing commercially well.
Getting messed up.
She's had Solo with this. She did a great job. Bombed at the box office. You have, and I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying it bombed at the box office. But you have Secret Invasion, which fell very flat, and she was great in that.
Another situation where studio stepped in, flipped over the table, brought in new people to clean up the mess, and sort of disavowed the first pass at it for whatever reason, and then ended up with at least in Solo they got lucky and they got Ron Howard.
Right.
In Secret Invasion they did not get lucky.
Right. Well, I think part of it is you piss enough people off and nobody wants to work for you. Right.
Yeah. And it goes into that whole garbage in, garbage out, right? If you start with a flawed premise and you think, oh, we'll fix it in post. And I think this is what Marvel was getting itself into. It's like, okay, we'll just shoot everything and then bring it back and we'll rearrange the pieces. That's not storytelling.
They also fired the editor in this movie when they fired the directors.
Really?
Yes,
right,
they fired the original editor. So they really cleaned house with it. I think part of it too is people got a bad taste in their mouth about the studio here because they were leaking all of this. They were leaking that they saw a cut of the film, they hated it, and they fired these directors. And that they had hired Ron Howard because the first two directors failed.
And that's in Hollywood. That's really bad.
That's reputational harm.
Right.
Super
exactly.
Bad reputational harm.
And that's why whenever you see interviews with actors, oh, it was so great to work with that person. Oh, everybody's saying always nice things about each other, regardless of what the truth is. It's because you don't want to blow up somebody else's situation or have them come back on you later. It's very easy because actors are always out doing promo and studios are always trying to promote projects. So if you go trashing other people's relationships, that's just and reputations, that's just bad. That's just not cool. And fine, it didn't work out. Okay, cool. But you don't intentionally blow somebody up unless there's a real situation, And
it sounds like there wasn't. It sounds like there was literally just a creative vision difference.
And this just goes back to the fact that I think Lucasfilm are very nervous and they're working very hard to protect their brand and they're operating out of fear rather than a creative vision.
Right. Well, I really enjoyed everyone in this movie. I even enjoyed Beckett and how he taught Han too well.
Right. Yes.
He taught Han really well with the whole people are predictable. The whole he's just talking until he can get a shot in at Han. Right. He's talking to get Han distracted.
Yeah.
And Han sees that and he's like, "All right,
shoot first."
Like, that was a good move. Good move, Han.
I liked because it also gave me an echo to Cassian Andor, who can make a quick decision. And in that situation, right, he's got to shoot him.
Right. Very episode 1, right? Of Andor.
Yeah. I did feel very bad for Chewbacca having to schlep all those heavy briefcases around on a desert planet when you're a fur, when you're a creature that has a heavy, thick coat of fur. They just treated him like a valet, like Lurch or something. I was like, come on, man.
Let me ask you something else about Chewbacca. He's 190 years old.
Yeah.
And he's got like an 8-year-old in the holiday special. When was Lumpy born?
Yes. I think Wikipedia has a whole bio on Lumpy. So I think that will probably stitch it all together.
He's flying around with Han as a fugitive of the Empire. When is Lumpy born? I need to know. If you don't know what we're talking about, the Star Wars holiday special, which is now non-canon, but we're having fun with it.
45 years old this year.
An absolute disaster. And it's so fun to watch. And it's so fun to talk about. And it's just chaos in a 2-hour movie. It's actually like 90 minutes if you take out the commercials. You can find it on YouTube. Just look for the Star Wars Holiday Special 1978. And we are doing a podcast on it. We already recorded it. That'll be out the week of December 5th when this documentary about it comes out.
You know what I think is the cool thing is that unbeknownst to us, we actually recorded it on Life Day, on the day that it originally aired on television. And I think that the thing to remember about the holiday special is it was 2 hours of television in a format that was normal at the time, which is a variety show style. But the thing that it missed was having a host, which most variety shows would have some sort of structure to it. And Lucas himself, they were like, yep, we got to do something. We got to keep the airwaves filled with Star Wars content. But they were too busy working on
Well, the
Empire.
execs from the studio reached out to Lucas and said, can we do something with your characters? And he said, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Gave them access and then walked away from it. And then they didn't know what they were doing. So,
right.
But it is a brilliant piece of 1970s history.
Did you see Mark Hamill tweet about it the other day?
No, I missed it. I'm using the Dead Bird site less and less. So
yeah, me too. But he retweeted somebody who said, like, what's your favorite part of the holiday special? And he wrote the ending. He said the credits.
That's cute. That's cute.
Well, I think we can move on here, David, to our discussion of sort of the state of Star Wars. I think that'll lead us nicely into feedback because we have this movie that had a disaster of a production, but ended up pretty good. And it was on the heels of The Last Jedi, which was very divisive. Again, I liked it. A lot of people didn't. And that's part of why it did not pull its weight at the box office, unfortunately. Again, it was also 5 months after The Last Jedi. You got to remember it was a May release, and it was literally 5 months after the last Star Wars movie. And I think people were getting a little bit of movie fatigue too.
And it's disappointing because we were expecting a whole this is going to bring the new era, the new dawn, and we're going to have these things called a Star Wars story, right? You know, this sort of product line where they're going to pop these things out, and then
we heard an Obi-Wan was in development, and then that became the series.
Yep, and they went the TV route.
Yeah. Which I'm fine with the TV route, but not everything needs to be TV.
No.
So anyway, I think that you wanted to talk about sort of how Ahsoka made you feel about the state of Star Wars last time. And you talked about that at the end of our Revenge of the Sith podcast, and then I cut it because we had to go and I didn't want to end on a bad note. So I'm giving you your vehicle now to discuss how you're feeling about Star Wars.
Well, I think I've already let some of those feelings and opinions out already in this podcast, so I don't want to belabor the point too much. I'll reiterate the fact that I think Lucasfilm is lacking creative vision and an artistic focus. I think part of the problem is that Disney bought Star Wars for $4 billion. So that's a huge line item on their books. And that monkey needs to be fed, right? That you've got to have return on value for that. I'm no corporate, wizard with numbers or something like that, but I can certainly believe that a publicly traded company like Disney splashing out $4 billion in cash, you better see some returns on that investment. And so I think what that gets into then in terms of corporate governance as opposed to creative visioning is that corporate executives who are conservative by nature are under pressure to return on that $4 billion. Every title that goes out has to be a hit, and it's got to be a hit for the widest possible audience. We've got to scoop huge scoopfuls of cash every time we hit the streets with a new product. And I think when you see a film like Solo here, it's packed with stuff. It's just overstuffed. And I think that's the evidence of the issue right there. And
Sure.
I think we were kind of, we were even kicking around this idea a minute ago with, oh, well, you could do stuff with the Syndicate-verse and whatnot. You've got to, what I would love to see Star Wars do is start setting up these different content tracks, maybe a little bit like Star Trek does with animated series, and you got Deep Space Nine, you get some different stuff. But you could say, and Star Wars already does this with Lego and the kids stuff. They've already got a track there for that. And then you've got a little bit in the animated world for the, tweens. But give us the adult Andor track, give us the general purpose audience track of, Solo.
The Mandalorian is great, general audience kind of thing.
Exactly. And settle into that fact that you've got different product lines and actually recoup your $4 billion and actually start to make a profit by giving showrunners and writers the creative vision and the room to maneuver in their lane, set up some lanes, and let people create. There are people who are so passionate about this universe and this IP. Or Tony Gilroy, passionate about telling good story, and fine, let's set it in the Star Wars universe. That works. But let them do their thing. Because if you sit on them and you give them notes and you tear it down and you go back and you reshoot 70 times, how many movies have we been promised that are now canceled? Or things that have been developed. And we hear, oh, this director, that director, oh, now they're unattached and they're not signed. That movie's not getting done. I think Star Wars leadership is in a pathetic state right now. And
I would agree with that. With that. I think it's a leadership problem, not a problem of the writers or directors as much.
No, or the universe.
I think that they like you said, I think they need to let them have creative vision. And, I was talking about Doctor Who on Second Breakfast. So I think it has similarities and differences because it is a TV show at heart, right? It's closer to Star Trek in that regard. And it's generally had one track. There's audio dramas and all these other deep cuts, but like generally on screen, there's one track, which is the TV show, Doctor Who. And there's a couple spinoffs, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No movies except the 1981. All right. I'm done now. But the point is, I was saying that I kind of enjoy Doctor Who more sometimes because it's willing to swing and miss. And it's willing to do something wacky and weird.
Right.
And then sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't. And there are some bad episodes of Doctor Who, but there are some amazing episodes of Doctor Who. So you get this, and I think it's the same way I feel about the prequels, right? Which is that the highs are just so high and the lows are so low. But I would rather have that than have something that's so vanilla that it never makes me feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
the vanillaness is because of this corporatization.
Mm-hmm.
And this shareholder value and corporate executives are conservative by nature for a reason. They're trying to protect, the bottom line. Creatives by nature are risk takers. They're willing to take risks, just like you said with the Doctor Who stuff. They're going to take big swings and sometimes they're going to miss. And so you have two inherently contradictory forces here. And if they're in balance, then we get amazing stuff. The Matrix, right? I've been on record before about The Matrix, an amazing creative vision that had tight constraints on it. And it told an incredible, visual story. And then they're like, oh, here's the bags of money and go make some more for us. And then they just mush down into nothing because it was out of balance. The creatives were too far away from, the tight business controls. So if those forces are in balance, and right now I think with Lucas Arts, it's out of balance. There's no balance in the Force.
Well, I think the point is that Star Wars in general, when it began, was something seen as not going to be a moneymaker, as not safe for a corporate entity to invest in, which is why George Lucas had the rights, right? Is that he had to go do the legwork for this. Right. This was not handed to him. And you're never going to get the high of something that's never been done before by doing the same thing over and over again, even if it was once novel. So they need to have these new ideas come in. They need to have these creatives have a little bit more space. I think that's the point. I think that's great. But I do think that you can make good media that appeals to multiple audiences. I will say again, Doctor Who is made for kids and adults together.
Mm-hmm.
And Star Trek, I think, to an extent too, right? I'm less familiar with that industry, but yeah, I think that generally Marvel, there are things that they've done well that are for both kids and adults, and I hope that they can get back to that level of quality with Star Wars. And I'll say, I want to transition into Ahsoka now because we're going to get into feedback in a second. With Ahsoka, I enjoyed 7 of the 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed 7 of the 8 of them, and the last one didn't stick the landing, and that was so disappointing for me because I wanted it to succeed, because I want to be able to say I'm really loving this. I really liked the full season of The Mandalorian. I really like the last season of The Bad Batch. So a lot of these things they are delivering. It's just a consistency problem. And like I said, I want a little bit of inconsistency in that I want risks to be taken. But I think the point with Ahsoka was it fell flat for me because there was no risk taken. Because they went with the traditional, oh, she can suddenly do the
Right.
thing.
Right.
And the reason I said do the thing is because I'm now going to give a spoiler warning for Ahsoka, because we're going to move into Ahsoka feedback too. So now everything Star Warsy, you will now be spoiled. So don't stay here if you haven't seen Ahsoka and whatnot. But all right, now that we've done that, having Sabine suddenly use the Force, I think that was something that was very, traditional. Luke Skywalker in the den on Hoth, pulling up the
Right.
lightsaber out of the thing. It's just the same story I've seen a million times, and I'd rather not see that again.
Right. Right. And I think this goes back to a point that I was making before too, which is if every project out the door has to be precious and it has to hit, you're loading too much expectation and value on every single property. So when something does swing and miss, then oh my god, it's catastrophe, it's terrible. Oh, and we have to rethink our whole strategy and whoa. Whereas if we're just popping stuff out and we're kind of letting stuff fly, and this one failed and that one hit and this one was pretty good and wow, that one was super interesting, it was a really unique take. I think we would have a richer environment and we would feel a little bit looser about everything. I think the Ahsoka finale really was hard on the fandom because there were some people who were like, yeah, it's fine. There's some flaws there. I take your point. Yeah. Okay. No problem. And then there are other people who are like, wow, I'm really disappointed. It had so much potential and it fell on its face. And then that set up these sort of negative vibrations in the fandom, which is disappointing because I don't think either side was wrong.
No, I think the people who were really disappointed in it, like us, are very like, hey, we're disappointed in this because we want the franchise to be better. We want it to be better managed. We want to watch more interesting stories. I want to see the story of somebody who is not force sensitive or low force sensitive, but can still do the job. I want to see the ordinary people like Cassian Andor and like Sabine used to be before this random I can use the force deal.
Right.
So that's really where I was at. I really don't want to belabor this too long because we talked for like 3 hours on the Ahsoka finale. Speaking of Ahsoka,
yeah, and that brings in a feedback email that we got from Christine O, who was kind of upset because when we did our wrap up podcast, I think you were a little bit more agitated than I was, and people were like,
I melted a little bit for fun.
Okay, and that set some, that upset some people. That upset Christine and some other people.
It was profoundly divisive. I had people literally congratulating me on the Discord, and I had people like, you are very wrong. So I apologize to those who thought I was wrong, and I thank those who congratulated me on my saltiness.
And I want to go back to this idea that when people complain about something, it's because they care about something. For every complaint, the other side of the complaint is a sense of caring, or a sense of it could be better or could be different. And so, yeah, it's you got to hear that as well. And we certainly didn't mean to upset people, but we were also upset in our own minds as well. And that was it was being expressed, and it was trying to be expressed in a fun and jokey way, but maybe it didn't come off so jokey, or, whatever, it came off, and that hit people wrong.
And I think that it's important for us to say when we didn't like something, because
Absolutely.
if we don't, then
we're shills.
You'll never know if, we're shills. You're never going to know if we actually like something or not. You're just going to be like, well, they want screeners, so they're going to, they're going to say nice things about this. And that's not what we're here to do.
Thing. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not going to do that. We're
going to speak our minds.
This is our side gig. And we are going to just talk into the microphone like we have for the last year and a half.
And I think that makes for a better overall experience ultimately, is because we're being authentic, and we're being, we're speaking our minds, and that's part of what people want. I know there are times when I go to other podcasts, I'm like, oh, I saw this movie or this episode. I want to fix my reaction based on somebody else's reaction. That's part of what drives podcasts like our little cottage industry that we have. So I'll run to the Ringer, or Bald Move, or post-show recaps, or, you name it, oysters, clams, whoever. And go, oh, what did those people think? Oh, do I agree with them? Do I don't agree with them? Because it helps us fix our positioning in space and time and stuff. And so if we're giving false signal on something, that doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do us any good. And ultimately, it leads to a less fun product, a less fun podcasting community that we have.
Right. Well, speaking of podcast community, we had Marilyn Arpakila write in with Ahsoka feedback. David, do you want to read it? Because my throat is not feeling great.
Okay. Greetings, gentlemen. Here are some thoughts in no particular order. I agree with John about Morgan. I found her to be very flat, and thus had no emotional connection with her, and a little understanding of why she did what she did. I think they were relying too much on assuming viewers' knowledge of the character from earlier shows. And even her appearance in The Mandalorian was not all that lengthy. Any thoughts or...
Yeah, I recall not caring for Morgan that much. I think my thoughts on Ahsoka are well established at this point.
Right, okay, we'll just keep going. John's creation of jumping the gap reminded me of the Norse... Oh, I can't pronounce this word that she wrote in here. Gap. Ginnungagap. It comes from Norse and Germanic mythology and refers to the void in which the world is created, known to be a place of frost. Lots of space for creativity there. On the question of character arcs, I found myself wondering if we got Ahsoka's arc too soon. It was a tremendous inner shift for her, but it was pretty much wrapped up in 2 episodes before the season finished. Perhaps this is part of why people tend to forget how much took place for her. I also wonder if there had once been a bit more material filmed with Balin, but they decided to cut it because of the actor's death, or in order to maintain continuity with whatever changes they decided upon for the next time we pick up the story. We have had this conversation before about length of episodes, what's good, what's optimal. And it's, what does the showrunner want to do to tell their story, not what the studio, I want to make 12 or 15 studios.
But
says,
wasn't there
10,
production drama with this?
Yeah, they were 6,
stretched?
and then they stretched it to 8. So they cut 1, I think 2 and 3, or 1 and 2, something like that.
So I think you could feel that, because I think episode 2 was kind of, nothing happened in it, something like that. I don't remember, but it's been too long since Ahsoka. We put this feedback off. If you're confused as to why you're hearing Ahsoka feedback right now, let me just say this. We said that we would do it on Revenge of the Sith, and then we had a family thing. Both of us did, and we had to push feedback again. So now we are here doing feedback for Ahsoka, Revenge of the Sith, and Solo.
Yeah, we were going to do this as a standalone pod, but now we're doing it on Solo because, it's just Star Wars, right? It's a Star Wars continuity.
It's all the Star Wars stew. Stew Wars.
I picked up we should watch Hardware Wars sometime. That would be fun.
I'm not doing that.
Which was a that was a fun parody where like toasters and irons are being dangled on strings in front of a starry background, and it's sort of a
I don't even know that, but I do think we should add Spaceballs to. I think we should do it in April. For
Okay.
April
Yeah,
Fool's Day.
I like that. That's a good one. Okay.
Yeah.
That's done. I picked up on an interesting, though subtle difference in speaking of the Force by two masters. Ahsoka tells Sabine to trust the Force. Obi-Wan told Luke to use the Force. I wonder if that's a reflection of the real-world time in which each show was presented, or if it represents a difference in Filoni's philosophy vis-a-vis the Force. Or perhaps it reflects the difference between Obi-Wan and Ahsoka.
Okay.
Yeah, this is interesting. I don't know if there is something going on with Filoni and what they're telling in terms of the Force story, but I think it's interesting to contrast it slightly. We just saw the Marvels, and the Marvels ending, I will not spoil directly, I'll try to hint at it, tells a story in a different way rather than a loss. You have to have a loss to gain something. You can gain something by, operating in a different way. And I'm wondering if Ahsoka is part of that story shift in the larger zeitgeist that's saying, well, yeah, we don't have to go from this trauma standpoint of like, oh, my family was killed and now I'm a superhero. But like, yeah, stuff is tough, and we're doing the best we can, and let's figure out some things based on trust and mutual cooperation, and rather than dominance and killing or something like that. Like I'm not trying to get too fuzzy wuzzy here, but the idea that Ahsoka represents a different style of utilization, which is why she's not a Jedi. Right? She's not she's not part of the Jedi Order, regardless of whether it exists or not. She was trained by them.
I didn't load up my sounds.
Oh,
Ahsoka, a Jedi, maybe not. You'll see why.
Yes, we need a more original hits from John Lorehound.
Yeah, we'll see.
The people are missing your music, John.
I don't know what it is about Star Wars TV, but it gets me going for my music.
Well, come on, Lucas. We need more TV because we need more John to make more music.
There you go.
Marilyn continues, regarding the elimination of the clone soldiers post Order 66, I think that the Emperor and or Tarkin were taken aback a bit by the very success of the inhibitor chips and realized that someone could engineer something similar to backfire against them and their rule. Hence, the obsession with the Bad Batch and the destruction of Kamino. That's an interesting theory.
Mm-hmm. I think also part of it is they want to have, if it's just the clones, it's very easy to remove yourself from the military and feel less patriotic, less, in with the Empire. If your brother, sister, friend is being conscripted to the Imperial military, now, I know a stormtrooper, and now you're going to be a little bit more sympathetic to the Empire's cause.
And I think Brian 8063 had mentioned something about that too, in the history of like, that's a good way to, like you're saying, is to insulate.
Oh, that's literally it's in his feedback later tonight. So let's save it.
Oh, it is? Okay. We have that feedback.
I just saw that. Yeah.
Cool. Perfect. So we'll get there when we get there. All right. Marilyn continues. Regarding Sabine's Force energy or lack thereof, I think it's a case of the Force moves as the Force wills. There's an important mystical component here. I really dislike the whole MIDI chlorionizing, which is not predictable or controllable. Breakthroughs in meditation practice are similarly random. You do what you can to prepare yourself. You open up and you wait. In Sabine's case, I think it was a question of her dire necessity as well. For whatever reason, when the time came, she reached out to the Force, and the Force reached back, and that's all there was to it.
Yeah, but that's the problem, is that when it only comes at the time you most need it, that's a Deus Ex Machina.
Right.
Right.
And it's a story that it's a story that's been told already. We already have had that story.
And the Force is the deity of this universe, right? That is the
Right.
holy energy of this universe. It's
Right.
literally a deus ex machina if the Force decides to reach back at the moment she most needs it.
Especially when we have no hard and fast rules about how the Force works or what you can do with the
Right.
Force, and Force ghosts, and working with animals, or
Mm-hmm.
telekinesis. There's a lot of different stuff that nobody really knows how it can be wielded or shaped or utilized.
Right.
So it leaves the mechanics wide open, which means that at any time you need something to happen, it's the Force.
Right. That is a problem. It is a problem going forward. We'll see.
All right, Marilyn wraps up, and so now we wait for what exactly? Film, TV series, books? I wonder if a lot of the frustration people have been expressing with the ending and the series in general is that it's over and we're left with so many questions and we have no idea how long it will take to get the answers. I
That is
totally
a
agree with
great
this.
question. That is a
Yeah,
great point, Marilyn. I think that if they had said, okay, season 2 is coming in a year or two, it would feel a lot better.
right. We've got the script, we've got some directors attached, blah, blah, blah. Great.
But part of it was this was right in the middle of the strike this was on.
True. And then sadly, Ray Stevenson passed away. And so that adds even more of a gray cloud over a uncertain landscape, right? So,
Right.
yeah, and it doesn't do them any. Anyway, I don't want to keep kicking Lucas film because I could do that all day. All right, Marilyn concludes, but we do know that you'll be there to discuss the answers with us when the time comes, and that is a comfort. All the best, Marilyn. Oh, thanks, Marilyn.
Thanks, Marilyn. Always great to hear from you.
We had a great time on the Marvels podcast. Marilyn came in as a guest, and she brought in some really cool insights, and it's always great to have her around.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
All right. Next up is Eric F. I believe Eric F. is a lore master, isn't he? One of our Patreon subscribers. With some final Ahsoka thoughts. Hi, all. First off, allow me to apologize for the length of this email. When it comes to Star Wars, sometimes I get verbal, or in this case, typed diarrhea, LOL. So we've already established that the statues carved in the mountain that Balin is standing on are the Mortis gods, at least the father, the balance of the Force, the son, the dark, which is the dark side, and what remains of the daughter, the light side statue, which I think is destroyed because the sister now resides in Ahsoka. Well, the hand of the father, which Balin is standing on, is pointing to a mountain or maybe a temple. Something which a glowing flame, something with a glowing flame atop. Yeah, I got very Mordor vibes during this whole sequence of it.
Mordor,
Anakin saw a familiar
Mortis. All right, I'm done.
Yes, exactly. Right. Anakin saw a similar looking temple in the Mortis Gods arc of the Clone Wars. The temple belonged to the father. The hand of the father may be pointing Balin to the direction of his temple on Peridia. Some people say Peridia. Is it possible that the father is using the temple to imprison a very dangerous character from Legends continuity, aka the mother, aka Aboleth? Abeloth?
I don't know who this is, so you got to just tell us, Eric F.
In Legends, the Mortis gods didn't always reside in Mortis. They once existed in our reality, and we cared for the mother. In Legends, the mother feared death and losing her family. She was also afraid that her family would forget her. This fear led her to drink from a dark side power called the Font of Power and to bathe in the pool of knowledge. Both acts were forbidden, which led to her becoming an immortal god, but it also corrupted her into the very chaotic and powerful dark side being, very much like Eve in the Bible. When she ate, Marilyn's I'm curious. I would love to have Marilyn's reaction to this, or Anthony's for that matter too. Let's see, where did I lose my place here? Very much like Eve in the Bible when she ate of the tree of knowledge. Abeloth became so powerful and dangerous that the Mortis gods had to imprison her and flee the planet. The planet they fled to may have just been Peridia. In Ahsoka, we see Zepho, a race of corrupted darkside users who fled the main galaxy, ruins on the Night Sister temple that Thrawn was standing in front of on Peridia. In Legends, the Zepho named Kuthamir, whose name also appeared. That may be, not sure about the pronunciation of that because uh, Eric had a question mark about spelling there, whose name also appeared in Sith runes on that same Night Sister temple. Kuthamir also had a temple on Dathomir and was very closely related to the Night Sisters. Woo, this is some deep lore. We're diving deep here.
Sure, yeah. I feel like I'm in the deep end here. This
Yeah,
is way further than I know.
get your
And
Nitrous
again,
tanks on.
if you're listening and you don't know what Legends is the non-canon track of Star Wars at this point. So when Disney bought Star Wars, they said, "Hey, most of what existed before now, besides the mainline movies, are no longer canon," and they call them Legends. So you can
Right.
still buy them, you can still enjoy them, but they're not going to be considered part of the current canon.
And this is, in the book, mostly in the written books. So, right. All right. He continues. I say all of this is part of a theory, being that, again in Legends, the Zepho traveled to Peridia to learn about the Force. Perhaps on Peridia, something devastating happened, and the kingdom, along with the Zepho, were destroyed, causing the Mortis gods to flee. That devastation could very well have been caused by the unleashing of Aboleth. After Aboleth destroyed the planet, the Mortis gods imprisoned her between two black holes, again, Legends. Perhaps this is the equivalent of the world beyond worlds, and Aboleth is imprisoned there. It does reside outside of time and space and would seem to be the perfect place to imprison such a dangerous being. The world between worlds has various portals leading to various force-sensitive planets, such as Lothal, Peridia, Dathomir, etc., possibly even Dagobah. So perhaps the voice that was calling out to Balon was the voice of Aboleth reaching out to him from the world between worlds using the temple on Peridia. Balon could be seeking a way to control the world between worlds and is seeking that knowledge from the last living Mortis gods, Aboleth. In Legends, Aboleth wanted to destroy the universe and remake it in her image. This sounds very similar to what Balon wants to do. He wants to end the cycle and restart things. Also in Legends, Aboleth has the power to possess people. Perhaps she could possess Shin. Shin may have also finally heard Aboleth and is seeking her as well. Aboleth could use Shin as her vessel to bring about her vision of Ragnarok and giving Shin the power she so desperately wants. Wow, big theory here. John, thoughts or ideas? I mean, it's basically just opinion at this point. What do you think of Eric's theories here?
Yeah, I like it. I think that it could be a little bit too deep for and not deep in like people won't get deep plots, but it's so into the weeds of established lore. I don't know if Filoni will do it, but I could see Filoni doing a version of this because that's something that Filoni does a lot. Is he takes a very complicated Legends thing and he oversimplifies it and then he puts it in his shows. Sometimes people love it. Sometimes people say, "Hey, you kind of just took something and you know nullified it a little bit." But I hope that there's something that's cool because I love your theory here.
Yeah, I think it's got to be something big like this because, as you said, Balin's trying to break the cycle. He's trying to break the wheel here, and it's got to be something big like this. So I think it's interesting. We'll see, but it would be fun to bring in to go in this direction. I like the general direction. I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
All right, continuing. A side note, the Night Sisters may in fact be drawing their power from Aboleth. It is, after all, dark side magic, and it would make sense that a matriarchal society such as the Night Sisters would worship a female Mortis god. But now that the Mortis gods are dead, the bonds imprisoning Aboleth may have weakened and they fear Aboleth's return. Balon did say that perhaps the Night Sisters were fleeing a power greater than their own. Yep, I think all pretty consistent and
Yeah. Oh,
all open
I really
questions.
like this theory the more you talk about it. It's just I'm wondering I think that you are on the right track because I think Filoni's going to do something like this. He's just
Okay,
going to change it up to make it a little bit more digestible.
right. All right, he's wrapping up his email now. I know this is a lot of theories and speculation based almost exclusively on Legends material, but Filoni has pulled from Legends frequently, and let's face it, until we get more Ahsoka theories and speculation, speculation is all we have. The purpose of this diatribe was to spark a conversation and theory crafting regarding what we'll see next. Well, I think you've succeeded in that.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge infusion of lore and interesting thought and idea, and yeah, it would be exciting to go in that direction. I look forward to the thoughts as well as all the content you produce. Please keep up the excellent work. As previously stated, this is the best $10 I spend each month. Take care, Lore Master Eric F.
Well, thanks, Eric. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. You even give us that trivia a couple Ahsoka episodes ago, so thanks for that.
Right.
A lot of fun.
Well, I just want to say thanks to Eric F2 for being a Patreon supporter, and to all of our Patreon supporters. It really, yeah, this is our side hustle, but there's a lot of costs involved, and so it's just really great to have everybody's help. And yeah, we'll talk more about Patreon at the end, but yeah, really appreciate all you.
Absolutely. Aaron T writes in with a link to the Honest Trailer YouTube video. I guess this is the account that does a bunch of, like, here's a jokey trailer where we summarize the whole movie and make fun of it. Aaron T says, just in case you guys didn't see it, the Honest Trailer's take on Ahsoka is pretty on point. Did you watch this, David?
I did, but it was a while ago, and so I don't remember what it was, because we didn't cover the feedback in a timely fashion. So
I know. Well, I'm gonna check it out right after this. But anyway, take Aaron T's recommendation and go watch it.
Yeah, and it's just YouTube. Yeah, just Honest Trailers Ahsoka. It comes right up. So
yep. Brian 8063, our friend and patron, writes in with a follow up comment about conscription, as we were talking about before. Right. On the Ahsoka podcast, you were asking about patriotism in the military. I think it was related to moving from clones to non-clones in the Empire Army. The issue fits well into all the Star Wars material, so here we are. Complex question, especially in Star Wars universe where we don't know the full situation. Clearly, the clones were all drafted into the Clone Wars, and I assume the Empire. I'm not sure after that, though. We know people were taken, but did the Empire have a draft or volunteer non-clone army? Knowing this would help form the answer. However, families who do have members who serve tend to be patriotic. They share this idea that their country is special and worth fighting for, so patriotism is high. To fight a total war, patriotic enthusiasm must be high. When Sabine entered the academy, she said she trusted the Empire, which alludes to her being patriotic, or maybe for economic reasons. But she left the academy demoralized. Finn also felt demoralized after serving as a stormtrooper. We don't know why he joined in the first place. In both cases, there was little left to do if you left the military service. How former soldiers are treated is an important element of society. You see that after Vietnam in U.S. history and China now. The Empire saw their troopers as expendable, which is a big problem. You do have a disconnect between the government and the citizenry regarding policy. If you are in a draft army situation, it's more consequential. In a volunteer force, the effects of war may be more limited. The Civil War draft riots versus Iraq, Afghanistan during the War on Terror. I will stop here and let you know if this leads to further questions. So I do have thoughts on this. So there's a couple clarifying questions Brian asked that I want to answer here. I believe the original Imperial Army, and I could be wrong on this, so somebody could write in. I believe when they first started phasing the clones out, they said, hey, we're going to offer great benefits, great pay. Come join the Imperial Army. Come become a stormtrooper. I think that originally it was that. Then after a while, when that sort of got exhausted, by the time you get to Finn, well, Finn is not even an Imperial soldier, right? Finn is a First Order soldier. I believe they were actually like abducting children and whatnot, because I don't think Finn actually knew who his parents were.
Right.
Finn got his name from his number, right? It was like FN something.
I think so. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I think it changed quite a bit over time. And again, the First Order, it's like it is the Empire, but it's not the Empire. So we can't draw as many parallels, but who knows? David, any thoughts?
Yeah, just this idea that it's a way to bind the citizenry to a government's policies and forays into war and using military might as a form of policy. Yeah, it makes sense in a lot of ways. People are going to feel patriotic and got to support little Jimmy and little Janie out there on the front lines doing their bit for us,
Right.
right? So
Right.
it works.
I get it. My brother served as a Marine, and we went down to South Carolina for his graduation from boot camp. And we went to a restaurant nearby, and somebody handed him a phone card and was like, "Thank you for your service, son." And it just really, like, having the military around really does create this sense of patriotism that I think that the Empire really relies on in the early Empire stages. It's why it took 30 years for the rebellion to really get going.
Right. And it's interesting because at least in the history and the culture of the United States of America post Vietnam, we really went the other way, and so we stumble over ourselves to thank our service members and our veterans, whereas post Vietnam the opposite happened, and so it does inoculate to some degree criticism or critique of, do we really need another $1 billion bomber or this or that? It's like, well, you're not
Yeah.
being patriotic, right?
Well,
It's a shielding.
there's complicated thoughts about it now, right? Which is like,
Right.
hey, maybe if we respect our soldiers, we don't send them to wars that they don't need to fight.
There's that.
There's very, let's not debate the morality of war or
No.
wars here. But the point is, yes, Brian, thank you. Having this volunteer army is probably helping the Empire keep a hold on these worlds.
Yeah. And then
All
I
right.
think was it Marilyn previously who said that, well, what if somebody got a hold of the Order 66 inhibitor chip
Sure.
control
Yeah.
software and flipped everybody off, flicked the
Right.
switch, and then
Right. Yeah. Good question. Good question. Not great there. All right. Thank you, Brian. Always great to hear from you. Eric F is next, which is, yes, again, but this time talking about Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin. Hey, guys, Eric F says. Hey, Eric, again. First off, allow me to apologize for not sourcing my Vader info. Everything that I spewed forth was from literally decades of reading comics, books, etc., video games, internet articles, including Wikipedia and YouTube videos. While some of the info may no longer be canon, as John pointed out with Starkiller, it makes interesting headcanon for me, so I'm running with it. This is from a previous feedback, so don't worry about that if you don't know what we're talking about. Now on to the next. First, I heard you refer to Tarkin as Grand Admiral. Tarkin is actually a Grand Moff. Oh, which according to Wikipedia is lower.
Thessel.
Grand Moffs oversaw the. What'd you say?
Thessel.
Oh, Thessel.
I'm
Thessel.
giving you. I'm
I
never
thought you were
let you
saying. I thought you were saying asshole, which I thought you were referring to Spaceballs.
Oh,
when they're everyone around me is assholes. All right, we'll get to it in April.
In April, yeah.
Anyway. So he's a Grand Moff. Grand Moffs oversaw the day-to-day operations of the Empire, while Grand Admirals commanded the military. They were the proverbial sword and shield of the Empire, which Sidious would obviously value more. As for Tarkin's feeling towards clone troopers, it is stated in the Bad Batch that he disliked clones for two reasons. One, he questioned their loyalty without their inhibitor chips, which he was obviously correct about. He believed that conscripted soldiers were more dedicated to the Empire. Second, clones were more expensive than conscripted troopers. Tarkin would rather repurpose those resources to other projects, mainly the Death Star. Lastly, my headcanon can totally see Tarkin using a conscripted trooper's loved one as leverage to ensure their loyalty. There you go. There.
Right. So we're getting a lot of consistency here, in the theories.
Right. I think I've gone long enough. Very much looking forward to your future podcast. Keep up the great work, gentlemen. Lore Master Eric F. Eric, always a pleasure hearing from you. I think we're on the same page on the conscripted or perhaps volunteer soldiers. And good to know about Tarkin. I like Tarkin in the Clone Wars too, where he's kind of. I think I got confused because I think he is an admiral in the Clone Wars, and now you're going to tell me next episode that he's not. So it's fine.
It's interesting too about Moff versus Admiral, because I didn't understand that distinction. I didn't realize that Moff is something different as opposed to just sort of some generic rank or honorific. It's a specific It's like a baron versus a duke, right?
Mm,
They have specific structure and meaning to them.
exactly. There you go. He's either on or Moff. Duve71
Your kids
Revenge
are
of the
gonna hate
Sith.
you with your dad jokes when they get older.
Well, the good news is
Not
they
hate
don't
you,
talk
but
well enough to understand them yet.
it's
Duve
coming. It's coming.
71 Return of the Sith, Revenge of the Sith. Hi, David. Hi, John. Hi,
Return of the
Duve.
Sith. Return of the
I
Jedi.
said it correctly the
Revenge of
second
the
time.
Jedi.
Yeah, it's
I've
some
infected your
movie.
mind.
We're getting punchy. We're getting
ROTJ.
punchy. Firstly, thanks again for organizing the live watch. It's a great way to connect with other patrons, and it was great to join last night and have a few others in the chat. Marilyn even jumped on for 5 minutes. All great stuff, guys. Yeah, that was fun. That was the Revenge of the Sith live watch. You and I were chatting with Duve most of the night.
Yep, and then we did a live watch for Solo, and then up next is going to be Rogue One. That should be a good one. I think we'll do that in January sometime.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to live watch the holiday special, right? Because we
what?
It's a little tricky with
what?
the.
I'm planning my entire holiday series around that. I see my whole life.
All right.
I'm kidding.
All right. I'm not a great fan of the prequels, mainly due to how fond my memories are of the original trilogy and how they are inextricably linked with my childhood. I can remember being so excited for The Phantom Menace, the trailer gave me chills, but then when it landed, it was a bit of a clunker. For many reasons, one of them being the mind-blowing The Matrix, premiering the same year, The Phantom Menace just really disappointed. This then got a bit compounded with some of the more clunky storytelling and dialogue in Attack of the Clones. Saying that, though, Revenge of the Sith is hands down my favorite prequel, and it has some of the most iconic scenes and story that resonates throughout the Star Wars universe. Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah, I love the movie. I love
all the... of the prequels, it is the strongest, it's the most consequential, it's the most mature. Is mature the right word? Maybe the most developed or coherent.
Sure.
Like it just really felt like it knew what it was trying to do, and it did it.
Well, he had finally decided what he wanted to do with Jar Jar, so that really made the movie. Once he decided that Jar Jar should be a senator.
Moving on.
Rather than autopsy the plot and film, I thought I would focus my feedback on the section of the movie that gets me stoked every time it comes on, and that is the final fight between Anakin, Vader, and Obi-Wan. I found it a very exciting and dramatically important section of the film, and due to my long association with the original trilogy, I had imagined the fight between our two protagonists for probably 25 years. With rewatches, especially after the Clone Wars, the emotional resonance of the conflict between these characters takes on a much greater level of significance. The dynamic between Obi-Wan and Anakin has always been a little fraught. They are the traumatized siblings who lost their father figure when Qui-Gon was killed by Maul. It was further complicated by Obi-Wan being obligated to train Annie after giving Qui-Gon his promise as he lay dying. Add in the whole Chosen One and Annie being a precocious brat. I said it. It was a very complicated recipe for their relationship.
Yeah, I'd agree with this. Obi-Wan was not equipped or prepared to handle Anakin.
He literally took his night. He was a Padawan when he met Anakin. He took his night test at the very end of the movie when they're like, hey, you're ready. Go ahead. That's not enough time. You went from trainee to trainer right then.
Yeah. And that's where their relationship was more fraternal. You were my brother, right? You were my chosen one.
Right. Yeah, and I did like that they did that rather than having him be like, you were like a son to me, because I don't think he was. I don't think he was.
Yeah.
And that was the problem, is Annie needed a parent, and he did not need a big brother.
And to be a parent to Anakin were big. That would have been big shoes, to given him enough room to grow and to feel important and consequential and to feel his powers, but also keep him firmly pointed in the right direction. That is a tall order for anyone. And what's his name?
Obi-Wan?
Samuel L. Jackson.
Okay. Mace Windu.
Mace Windu, Yoda. Like, there was just nobody on the council who was wanted to do the job. So they're like, oh, we don't know what to do with this kid. We didn't want the kid in the first place. and B, nobody, who had the stature to do the work, the day to day, the day in and day out work of keeping Anakin pointed firmly in a direction.
Right. As Anakin is being groomed by Palpatine, who chooses, of course, to be the grandfather because he doesn't want to be the dad. Anyway, to turn his big brother, little brother, master apprentice dynamic with Obi-Wan heightens the conflicted feelings, the resentment, and we see that repeatedly in sulky Annie pouting to Padme about how he is more powerful than Obi-Wan and how unfair it is.
I'm cringing
Geez,
just listening to the description. I can hear him
G's
whinging.
having flashbacks to our kids being young teens. I'm having flash forwards. Lucas was probably leaning into the whole Cain and Abel. I scrolled fast and I thought it said Kanye, and I was like, are we doing that? All right,
Yeah.
the whole Cain and Abel aspect of this relationship. And it was inevitable that Anakin would have to confront and kill Obi-Wan once he began his descent to the dark side. Interesting. I don't know. I almost thought that Anakin wanted him to join him. I think he would
Sure.
have loved for Obi-Wan to join him. I don't think that Anakin was as jealous as Obi-Wan as you think. I think,
Right.
Duve.
Right.
I didn't see them as jealous. I thought he was more like mourning their relationship, mourning who he wanted Anakin to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Anakin's just trying to get out from under and just have people, relate to him as a consequential person who's, has impact and import. And he's trying to get out of his little kid shoes that everybody keeps putting him in.
You will try. The fight choreography is just amazing in this, and kudos to both the actors, and I would imagine their stunt doubles for giving it 110%. We see two of the most powerful and experienced Jedi of the Clone Wars era going toe-to-toe, and it's genuinely gripping, even as you know what the outcome will be. The location of Mustafar is brilliantly realized, and is probably the best use of fully CGI'd environments of the entire prequel trilogy. Definitely agree on that. Add into that mix the haunting music from John Williams and with the Battle of the Heroes, just up there with the main theme, Imperial March and Duel of the Fates, as the pinnacle of Star Wars orchestral themes. Yeah, the music in this scene is incredible. Great,
Mm.
great stuff. When you get Anakin's inevitable hubris and Obi-Wan's almost casual ending of the duel, it just hits really hard when Obi-Wan states how betrayed he feels, how he loved Anakin as a brother, and how could he have thrown everything away. Ewan McGregor justifies his inclusion in the universe, and it was here that he moved totally beyond a take on the Alec Guinness portrayal and made Obi-Wan his he is on fire, as well as Vader, and hits you with real grief for the brother he no longer has.
Mm.
Yeah, it really is heartbreaking because you really do know that Obi-Wan would rather Anakin right here be like, "Hey, I'm really sorry for what I did. Can we go back?" And they just go off into exile together and they save people, but that's just not going to happen.
No.
Phew, that's some premium quality filmmaking right there, and shows what the prequels could have been with some more input from a skilled writer and producers who weren't wed to the creator of the franchise. I only got 4 hours sleep at the end, and I am about to have my mum
Some
over for
people say
Sunday.
Kip.
So that wasn't a typo? That's a real thing?
Yeah, Kip. It means take
That's not
a
a
nap
thing.
or sleep. Yeah.
That's not a thing. You know what? You Brits make shit up all the time. I only got
Knackered.
4 hours of
He
Kip
he was really knackered the next day.
in the end. I thought this was a typo. I can't. That's why I said
Knackered means
sleep.
tired.
I went with context clues, but
Okay.
I get all right. And I'm about to have my mum over for Sunday dinner. So am now slightly punchy. Have a great one, guys. We'll skip Solo, not that I don't like it, and instead go all in on my favorite Star Wars movie, second only to Empire, Rogue One. May the Force be with
Yay.
you, Duve71 Stu. Thanks, Stu. Thanks, Duve. Always a pleasure hearing from you. And thanks for all of your support and all your chatter on here and on Twitter and on the Discord. Love having you around.
We'll have to be. I think when we get around to scheduling for Rogue One, we've got to make that a a friendly one in terms of timing and date, and I think that'll be probably one of the more popular live watches. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, Lorehound Connor M. David John, I'm just getting caught up on your Ahsoka content. I'm currently listening to your episode on episodes 1 and 2. You both have a brief interaction talking about how you don't understand how the Night Sisters use the dark side but aren't corrupted by it. I wanted to explain some info as well as some headcanon. Oh, using some of George's info as well as some headcanon. George explained, Lucas that is, explained that the light side is the pure natural form of the Force. The balance is totally the light side. The dark side is a forced, pun intended, corruption of the light side, subduing it to your will. He also explained that doing so will inevitably corrupt you. Right. So that's what they have to do. The kyber crystals, right? Is that John?
Yeah, I think that the kyber crystals, like, from your use of the dark side, they take on the red. It's not necessarily like a choice.
Oh, not that you force the
Yeah.
crystal. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, headcanon time. I would say that the Night Sisters are using the dark side. However, they are corrupting it in a truly unique way that affects them, but not detrimentally. The dark side of the Force is like torturing the light side and forcing it into slavery. The Night Sisters' magics are like a very seductive voice subduing the light side, but in a more polite way. Hopefully, you can see the difference between the two. Just wanted to share my thoughts.
Boy, oh boy.
Do you
It's
have thoughts on Connor's?
I have no idea. I genuinely have no idea. I mean, maybe that makes sense, but they don't have lightsabers, so we can't see if they're orange like Balin.
That's true.
I mean,
Uh,
only Ventress had a lightsaber, and she was a Sith too, so that would
mhm.
not count. I don't know.
This idea that the Force is this energetic feeling and or energetic power source, and then that depending on all kinds of factors to be able to bend it to your will or tap into a different way based on your unique existence or a school or a discipline. That's kind of the way that I've always gone with it. It's just sort of a big untapped energy. The fact that it is, say, on balance, more a positive thing, and so you have to be intentionally corrupting it to use it for the dark side. I think that's more interesting than just having a dualism of a good and a
Yeah,
bad,
yeah.
right?
George Lucas has said, as you said here, Connor, that the light side is the balance, right? Is that balance in the Force means light side, not necessarily equal dark and light side.
Right. So
I want to push back a little bit now that I'm thinking about it. Is
sure, yeah,
there is a novel called Dark Disciple, which is canon, and Ventress trains Quinlan Voss, who's a Jedi in it, in how to use the Night Sister type of dark side, and he goes to the dark side. Like, he goes through a time where he's corrupted by it. So I
okay,
don't think that it's necessarily the Night Sister magic itself that is turning them to the dark side. You could argue, though, that because she was Sith, she probably taught him more than just the Night Sister stuff. So I think it's debatable still.
right, interesting. Well, rich story ground if they decided to ever be creative in that regard.
Well, they supposedly are with the Acolyte coming out next year.
Oh God, please, fingers crossed. All
Yep.
right. Marilyn writes in again regarding Revenge of the Sith. Hello, David and John. It was fun to reminisce with you about the third prequel film. I'm pretty much in agreement with everything you said, though it's been a while since I've watched it and I'd forgotten a number of things. So this email is in regards to our podcast about Revenge following the live watch. When comparing the prequels to the other films, and particularly to the first three films that come out, i.e., 4, 5, and 6, it's important to remember the passage of time and the ways our expectations shift depending upon when we actually jumped into the Star Wars river, as it were. The thing to remember about 1977 Star Wars is that it was utterly unlike anything we'd ever seen before, and we knew that it would change everything in film. And I think this claim pretty much holds to this day. So, in a sense, to compare what we now know as A New Hope with any of the other films, particularly on the basis of things like storyline or dialogue, it's not quite apples and oranges, though in a way it is. we're so focused on the other things, particularly visuals and sounds, music, and our expectations for things like dialogue. We're so different than just some ramblings from someone from yet another decade.
Fair
So
enough.
it's a fair call, right? I mean, he threw it out. He didn't expect that this was going to go do what it did, and it makes for, I think, an ultimately interesting comparison of the decades, the sensibilities, the techniques of filmmaking, which is why I almost don't like it when I turn on and I see, like, say, the original Star Trek series, and they've redone all the graphics and the planets and the ships and all the stuff, or remastering Star Wars and changing the explosions and adding more street scenes in Tatooine, because it's contemporizing it, when part of, at least for me, what I want is the transport back in time. I want to reach back to another time and hear how they thought and what they thought, and how they express that in a visual medium. So yeah, I don't like tinkering this. If you want to reboot it and reshoot it and do the whole thing, great, fine. That's a whole different thing. But modernizing older films, I think, does a disservice to us, because it then takes us out of the time traveling perspective.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I think we should leave things intact.
Marilyn continues, I think that in the sequel trilogy, Luke almost killed his nephew out of guilt that he could have let him get so far into the dark without noticing. I also think that Obi-Wan turned on Anakin out of guilt, his own Padawan, after all, and I agree that it was very dark for Obi-Wan to leave him on the lava field to suffer such agony. The plot kind of forbade him from killing the future Vader, so what else could he do?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing you could do is give someone else the job of dismembering him, right? I mean,
Hey, droid, kill that guy. All right.
yeah. I no, I just mean, like, as the writer, give a different
Oh,
character that job,
mm-hmm. Right.
not
Not
Obi-Wan
in story.
delegating. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think if you're gonna leave Vader alive, that's really all you could do.
But then it sets up a moral conundrum, right? If you could have stopped, the worst, somebody who's committing unspeakable horrors on the world, should you stop them? If you
Okay,
had the chance, right?
I'll I'll
It's a
uh
trolley problem thing.
I'll headcanon for you, giving Obi-Wan more absolution for this. Let's have Obi-Wan carry Anakin back to the ship, put him in a med bay. They get hijacked. They kidnap Anakin. Obi-Wan narrowly gets away. But that's another half hour to the movie.
That's almost a whole other movie, right? You
Right.
cliffhanger that.
Right.
You cliffhanger that. You see him loading him onto the ship, and then you roll credits. On the question of precedents for Order 66, someone in the Discord already mentioned the Night of the Long Knives, Hitler's extrajudicial killings to prevent an imagined coup by the brown shirts in Germany. I would also point out that there are a number of other believable parallels, particularly in Scotland, the Black Dinners of 1440 and 1692, and the Glencoe Massacre, also of 1692. I think that those two dinners were also models for the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
All right, some interesting historical comparisons.
Yeah. I guess what's crazy about the Star Wars one is the scale, and I mean, of course. See, I don't know the Night of Long Knives. I'm not sure how many people died in that, but in the Star Wars Order 66, it was about 10,000 Jedi.
Right. And Night of the Long Knives, too, was, I think, largely an internal, do you call it a push? A putsch, a Putch, is that? Am I trying to rack my brains here? But it was an internal purge. It was as much as an internal purge as it was an external
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, so Order 66 is an internal purge. So it
Right. Yeah.
comports.
All right. All right. I like that.
And
I
Order
like
66,
that.
I mean, how do you do Order 66 galaxy wide? That's a pretty incredible transmitters, repeaters, whatever. It doesn't matter. Technology.
Sure.
Wave
Yeah.
your hands. It's magic. It's all magic in the end. I have always hated what they did to Padme. She started out as a classic folktale hero, a young girl or woman setting out on her own, determined to accomplish her goals, and accepting aid from anyone who would give it to her, to the fairy tale trope of the dead mother. While I realize that there are examples of medical death by heartbreak, the imagery was just too strong, drawn from that literally fairy tale tradition, and I grieve for the loss of that bold, courageous young woman who was committed to her peoples and always chose peace first whenever possible. They really did Padme wrong.
Yeah.
Completely wasted a talented actor and a good story
Yep.
character and the whole thing.
Yeah, it's really a shame what they did. Although Natalie Portman says she'd be willing to come back, so
Okay.
let's hope that that happens eventually. Because she is a lot better in the Clone Wars, the character. I think that they did develop a lot of that. She's always trying to make peace with the Separatists and whatnot. She like goes through back channels and talks to somebody. Is like, hey, can we get you on our side? Can we talk about some kind of peace treaty? And then of course Palpatine is still scheming though.
Right. Wrapping up, can't wait for the next two. I loved Solo and could not understand the negativity of the critics, professional and otherwise. And I will go on record saying that Rogue One is probably the best of all Star Wars films, superseded only by that one unforgettable original 1977 experience, which I will always consider to be the first Star Wars film, whatever names of the numbers they give it. May the Force be with you, Marilyn. Rogue One ranking high in the
I know the hype meter
feedback
is
sampling.
getting the hyperdrive. Maybe that's what we should call it. The hyperdrive is getting really high here.
Getting hot here. We're going to inject some oh God, now my brain is
Coaxium.
Coaxium, thank you, into our intake manifold.
And you're giving me a hard time about Vessel Run.
Come
on now.
Invert the flux capacitor. Figure in Dan B closes us out. Solo is so good, got an undeserved bad rap. I think it captures the spirit of the OG 77 movie, maybe more than anything to come out since the Return of the Jedi.
I think that's a pretty good take on it is very close to 77 in the vibe of it's kind of lighthearted but kind of serious, and there's really stressful moments, but most of the time you're like, okay, everything's going to turn out okay. And there are twists and turns that having Alderaan be destroyed is a pretty shocking moment in 77.
Yep.
But you also have here, Kira's betrayal is another shocking moment here, and the room
don't tell
where
me you didn't see
everyone
that
betrays
coming,
everybody. Oh yeah, 100%. It was coming from a mile away. She's like, I'm owing this, and again, that's another thing. Like, we never got the answer of what did she owe the Crimson Dawn, but
sure.
Whatever.
Yeah, well, but that's part of the mystique, and that's part of the insight. You don't always need answers for everything in that regard. So,
all right, David. We've done another Star Wars Film Fest podcast, and I think it was fun. I think it was fun.
Good.
Shall we do an outro?
We should. And just to say, Star Wars at thelorehounds.com. Join us on the Discord. We'll probably be looking at Rogue One in January, probably, of the new year.
But you'll have the holiday special to tide you over in December.
That's right. A very fun and delicious thing. And then, of course, there is this new book and movie or documentary about the making of it, which will be released on December 5th. So that's great timing. Cool.
Very cool.
What's going on in the world of our affiliates? Elysia on the Woolshift Dust channel and Properly Howard movie reviews.
Alicia's right in the middle of Beacon 23. That is the Hugh Howey series. If you liked Woolshift Dust, if you like the Silo show, you'll probably like this. She's doing that. I know she and I are going to do something with the Doctor Who specials. We're not sure how many podcasts we're going to do on it, but I'm hot on Doctor Who right now. I think Elysia is too. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with that. We also did a Follow the House of Usher podcast, and she did more coverage on her feed. So go check that out in the show notes.
And her and Luke are picking up Dune again now.
They are?
We've got an updated Dune release movie date for Dune 2, the Villeneuve. It's going to be on the 1st of March. They brought it up 2 weeks. And her and Luke are getting back into sync. and they're going to start rolling out their coverage. I think it's probably going to be sort of like a one a month type of podcast release
Cool.
on doing the whole 360 of Dune, video games and all these sort of adaptations and other documentaries, and just giving a wider historical context for
Right.
what we're going to see on screen.
Right. Well, cool. I'm glad to hear that, because I know nothing about Dune, as you know.
Too many what? Too many
words. Too many.
Words.
I always put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Syllable. Is the Kwisatz Haderach. And I got stick from Wheel of Time folks for not being able to remember all the names. So little fair play here in the Dune world.
Yeah, I can't take seriously Willy Wonka in the desert. It's just an issue for me. All right. Properly Howard is on break, but they have a full season of remakes that you can watch, and they are on the Severance feed that we are sharing with them. They're covering the full season 1. You can get, I think, the first 6 episodes now. It might be 7 by the time this comes out. And we will be on season 2. We will be covering season 2 with them. That'll be a lot of fun. And you can only get our podcast over there about Severance, or on the Patreon if you're a patron.
Right. So just search Lorehound Severance and you'll find the feed.
Yes.
And there's a link in the show notes as well.
Yep. So definitely go subscribe to that if you want our Severance coverage and you are only on the public feed.
Of course, we did the holiday. I was going to say we did the holiday special with them as well for the Star Wars. So that'll be out in December on our feed.
If you liked them on the holiday special, you'll like them on Severance. Anyway, for us, we've got a few things coming. Less so the next month, but I think we're going to pick up the pace in January with a couple things. We have, Earthsea is going, Silmarillion Story is going. We just put out another episode. We've got Second Breakfast is going to be going. Holiday special, as we've been talking about this entire podcast.
I think Elysia and I are going to do Napoleon. We might do a one shot on the Napoleon film.
Okay, cool.
She's going to see that, so I think that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And then Jean and I were talking, maybe doing something quick on Monarch, maybe just to dip our toes in and check it out. So I don't know.
And then Marilyn and I are cooking up something possible for Christmas. So we'll see.
Oh, okay.
We'll see if something's in the oven.
So it's going to be a buffet table. It's going to be a holiday buffet table.
Right.
And we're going to see there's going to be lots of things out on there for you. Definitely our Second Breakfast podcast, which is our year-end wrap-up where we rank our top 10 films. And that'll be publicly available to everyone. Normally that's a Patreon exclusive. But hey, under your tree or stocking or however you might celebrate the winter solstice holidays, it is our gift to you. It's a bit of fun to look in behind the thing.
Once Mariah Carey starts defrosting to sing All I Want for Christmas, our Patreon exclusive Second Breakfast goes public for the one time a year. It's our Christmas gift to our public listeners.
That's right. And then in 2024, we'll keep you guys updated. There's a lot coming out. The schedule is starting to fill up. We've got to figure out what we're going to do. Severance for sure, season 2, and then in terms of television shows, we've got some things to decide.
We've got a couple things kicking around, right? So we'll make some decisions internally and let you know what we're covering. If you are like really into something coming in the early part of the year, voice it now while we're still making decisions.
Right, exactly.
So on the Discord or something. Send us an email, whatever you want. Just let us know what you're thinking.
Yeah, however you want. Cool. All right. Well, should we give a shout out to our Patreon lore masters? We have a Patreon. It's a great way to support us if you like what we do and all the different projects that we have, and to support all of our other co-hosts too, because they get to share in a little bit of this. And we've got 3 levels, and we offer annual memberships, which give a discount. So like as little as $33 for a year. You get ad-free access to all of this and to Second Breakfast and other exclusive content. But to our lore masters, our top tier, we always like to give a named shout out. So John, would you please do the honors?
Samartian, Cyrus, Mark H, Michael G, Michelle E, David W, Brian P, Nick W, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Lavinia T, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Eric F., Matthew M., Sarah M., DJ Miwa, Andra B., Kwang Yu, Laura G., Deadeye Jedi, Bob, Nathan T., Alex V., Aaron T., Sub-Zero, Aaron K., and Adrian, who has requested to always be last on the list. And no one else has asked that. No one else is trying. So there you go.
Yeah. It's yours forever. Thank you all so very much. We really appreciate all your support. I mean, this is an amazing group of names. They've stuck with us, and we appreciate you. We appreciate everyone if Patreon isn't your thing, totally cool. We're just glad to have your listens. So,
absolutely.
All right, John.
David, pleasure talking solo with you and learning about the Kessel run, learning about the dice and how he's alone, so he's solo.
Yeah. There you go. And looking forward to Rogue One. That'll be fun.
See you then. The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. And connect with us on Twitter at The Lorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.